Hello and good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So I have to start off with a shout out because I'm in mourning this morning.
Yeah.
So I got my Niners mug. RIP to the season.
Oof. Yeah. I should have worn the Bills hat today. I didn't even think about that, but my morning was the week prior. So.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's a music show. We won't stay here too long, but I'm definitely a big fan. So it's good to do something positive today.
Positive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is exactly it. What did I say yesterday in our text? At least there's Madden. So
Yeah.
if you want to relive and win your season.
Yeah. I will be doing that.
At least there's a game that allows you to hopefully do that.
Yeah.
And so that we both don't get our asses handed to us. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, that said, welcome to the Sonic Alchemy. I'm Justin.
I'm Kevin.
Yep. Today we have, we're actually shooting a couple episodes today. But what we're talking about today is the concept of making it as an artist. And what does that mean? What's your definition? Which I'm excited to talk about because this is something over the years I think we both have thought about a lot, and I imagine other people do as well. So that said, Kev, what is making it?
I think it's just, man, I imagine that there's variations of that we all have throughout life. I think for me now, 50 years deep in this life that I have, making it to me has taken on different things. I think when I was, if I'm in high school and I'm playing in a band, a cover band or whatever, and we're trying to do original songs, I'm like, oh my God, this would be so great if we could play, and have the big, whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't think I ever let go of that. I think in different times, I've definitely felt like that accomplishment that you associate with seeing, music videos that see a band playing in front of a huge crowd, or going and seeing an artist and feeling like I need to be up there rather than here. Those kind of things kind of always had stuck in my brain, I think, is the litmus for whatever making it would be. But as we started on our journey writing music, and we were able to, and I told you this the other day, it definitely changed for me. I thought there was one part when we were writing the record, our first record, where I thought, oh, wow. There was a lot of talk about, okay, we're about to do this, but now comes the hard part, which is actually go out and perform it.
Yeah.
And there was a part of me that was like, wait, what? We got to go, oh yeah, well, yeah, I guess, that does go with it. You got to go and play these songs to people. And there was a part that was terrifying to me about that. But then there was also a part that was like, what if that takes off? Then what? The creature comforts of a day job that if, get you benefits and all this kind of stuff, you start to settle into your life, and that dream for whatever it is of being a musician or an artist or in a band and playing and touring the world. It kind of quiets down and you go, okay, I need to focus on doing the day job and getting that going. So when the realization or the possibility of us being able to go and actually play started to become more of a reality, I was like, oh my God, what is this going to be? How do I juggle both? I'm married. I take care of my family. What is that going to look like? So, but I think I've settled into the understanding that to answer that question, to me, making it now is the achievement of making the song and getting that out to people to be able to ingest and hear and critique or comment or enjoy. Maybe it does something for them. It takes on a different life that neither you or I or Michael thought of. That's incredibly satisfying to me. Playing live, I think for the very few times that we've gotten to do that as a band, also incredibly satisfying. The very first show that we did, I had a very hard time sleeping. And it was really weird because I came back home, you know, Lisa, my wife, you know, and my mom, they're both there seeing us perform. And it was surreal. Because they're seeing it and they're like, wow, they're really good. But this is weird because I'm seeing them like I would go and see an artist that I love, but it's also family. So I remember coming home after that night and them both kind of reacting to me in a weird way.
Oh,
it was
really?
Very strange.
Yeah.
It was like you were kind of like a larger than life, but then you're also, you know, for my mom, you know, it's like, okay, that's my son. And for Lisa, it's like, that's my hot husband up there bringing it down. So
Yeah. Playing live always works for that sort of thing.
yeah, so that was certainly a very exciting piece for me, and that I definitely think that making it to me is now just more a sense of accomplishment of achieving a goal, whether it be finishing your song, getting your songs out there, getting the opportunity to play, and honestly, at this point I don't care, and you and I have talked about this a lot too, but I don't care if it's playing in front of 10 people. If those 10 people are really in it, and they're there and they love what you're doing, that's super exciting. Making a video, which I know we'll talk about some other podcast, that also felt really, really exciting. You had a whole community of people that were around us that were friends of ours helping us make our first video.
Yeah.
That also felt like a big sense of accomplishment. So there have been moments, I think, where I felt like we made it. But we're not on the tour bus and we're not out there schlepping it every night, you know, and doing what a lot of artists do. I think I would enjoy that, but it would also come with a lot of give and take.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. When this topic was brought up, what excited me about it is that I guess, my definition has changed so much over the years, and it sounds like it has for you too. I think there's different levels to it, right? Because there's like there's the personal level, there's the professional level, and you know, when it comes to creating and pushing yourself, I think that process really never ends. And so, on one hand, you never make it, right? Because there's always something new to make. But when I go back, you know, I started playing music and I started playing music at like 9, but my aspirations to want to really do that, like be a musician, be an artist, was in high school. And so at that point, you know, like probably most people, you have these visions of grandeur, and, you know, I assumed, you know, I'll go pay my dues for a year. Right. Cause that's how long you pay dues for.
Yeah.
Maybe for some. And, you know, I'd be in some touring act and, you know, that'd be cool. And it didn't really work out that way for me. I think part of it is just growing up and realizing that expectations were a little unrealistic. And, you know, that's not saying that if you're 15 and that's what you want to do, that won't happen for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
There's so many incredibly talented people in different situations out there. But I think it's forced me to consider over the years, what is it that I really want out of this? And how much is enough, right? Because it would always be nice to have more, play more shows, make more money, put out more records, you know, whatever, right? Grow the thing and keep going. But I think my most core definition of it now is being in a position where I can regularly make art, because that hasn't always been the case. I'm really glad that early on, and this would be in high school, I guess, that I had some equipment at the time to be able to record my own music. Now it was shitty. It sounded awful. I basically stole Michael, our drummer's, his parents had bought him this, Boss. What was the model of that thing? Like BR 800 or something like that. And it was, what they called the studio in the box. They used to sell these at Guitar Center.
Yeah.
So it had a hard drive in it, and it had connections for speakers and headphones.
You had the hard drive.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
see, I think I had the Tascam with the tape.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
had to bounce, but the same idea.
Yeah. Same idea. This was pretty modern at the time. This is probably like 2005. And his parents got him the one with 8 channels because, he's a drummer. So he had mics and all this. But I remember we were playing together, me, Michael, and our friend Tyler, and we wrote our first song. And I'm going, man, this is awesome, but no one's going to hear it if we don't have a way to unless they're in this room with us.
Right.
And so I look over in the corner on this like fold up table is this recorder. And I'm like, Mike, let's hook this thing up. Like, let's record our song. And he, I don't remember exactly what he said, but basically he was like, yeah, I don't know how to use that thing. Which if anyone knows Michael, that sounds a lot like him now. So, I'm pushing him like, dude, come on, cause at that point I was new enough around him and his family that it felt a bit intrusive,
right,
or a bit presumptuous maybe for me to dive in there myself. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to get him to do it. And I'm like, well, dude, like read the manual. And he hits me with, well, you read the manual. So I did. I'm
the drummer. I don't want to.
Yeah. He just writes hits.
Yeah. Just write hits, guys.
Which is fine. Yeah. He can keep doing that because it turned into a passion for me. Anyway, fast forward, I was able to record our ideas, my ideas, all that kind of stuff moving forward. So luckily the point being is I am now and have most of my career been in a position to be in control of my own destiny as far as making stuff, right? Obviously limitations are involved when you don't have a big studio and you got to find workarounds, but I've never been limited on my ability to make a song.
Right.
And so whether it is or isn't a passion for those out there that might be listening, I would recommend at least empower yourself there. Because if all else fails, and I never play another show, no one ever hears the music that we make, I'm not going to stop making it because I can't.
Right.
So I think I've made it already in the sense that I have everything that I need available. It's off camera, but my little home studio setup over here, we've got great gear to be able to make stuff. Mm-hmm. And so at the heart of all of it, to me, that's making it. But I think it's an important discussion because just like me at 15 or you at whatever age, you get caught up in what you're seeing out there, right? The bands that you love, the artists that you love, you watch the award shows or the YouTube clips of, people playing in front of stadiums or whatever. Or, you hear about record breaking sales, Taylor Swift or whoever, right? And it's easy to start comparing yourself to that. And I think aspirationally, that's great. I wouldn't tell anyone to, don't try to be the biggest artist in the world. That's what you want to do, go for it.
Right.
But I think if you're not careful, you can miss what's right in front of you sometimes, and you can find yourself because I've been there. In fact, I hadn't planned on talking about this, but it just occurred to me that one of the songs on our first album, Chasing Ghosts, is actually all about this topic. Because you can find yourself really dissatisfied with where you're at and miss the forest for the trees, and the fact that I am a musician, I am an artist today. Now, would I love for it to pay my bills? Absolutely. And am I going to keep shooting for that? Totally. But it's not because I haven't made it already, I think. And I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with this assessment, right? Like everyone's got to make up their own definition of what that means for them. Mm-hmm. But really only because I just want to do more of what I love, and I don't have any desire to be, wealthy or even famous for that matter. Being famous doesn't really sound that fun to me. But I would love to be in a position one day where my day job, so to speak, is making stuff, whether it's for our band or working with other artists, because I'd love to do more producing. I've done some of that. I've certainly helped, record albums and singles and things like that. So just putting myself in a position where I have more time dedicated to do those things. But I guess just to circle back on that song idea, that was a big moment for me. I remember, honestly, it might've been from me reading Alan Watts, which is really funny because that's most people listening to this probably don't know Alan Watts, but he was popular during like the 70s, I believe. And he was a philosopher. And I remember reading a book of his, The Wisdom of Insecurity, and it really floored me. It was way too heady for me to really understand at the time.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking like, okay, I guess the thought was like, I was feeling really dissatisfied because I felt like my life was going to go a different direction. I really felt at 15, 16, that what I had envisioned back then was what was going to happen. And then when it didn't, and my life took these detours, I started really, initially you give yourself some credit, like, okay, well, I'll give it a little more time. I'll do this, I'll do that. It's fine. It's all going to come back around. The more time goes on, you feel like the path that you had envisioned and the path you're on really start to diverge. Mm. And then at a certain point, around the time I wrote that song, I felt like they were so diverged that there was no chance of them coming back. And that left me kind of depressed, like thinking, man, I must have missed my window. My chance to do this is over. My life just took this other path, and I was probably feeling a bit resentful about it. But I had to ask myself this question, is like, at every point, do I feel like I did my best? Mm. Which is a hard question to answer. And I'm sure there were moments where I didn't, but all in all, I really felt like I did. And what that led me to realize is that there was no other place that I could have ended up than exactly where I was, because you can't do any better than your best, and you can't control the factors of the world. You can't control most things. And so you're kind of along for the ride. So all you can do is put your best foot forward. The result is less important because there's no other way it could have ended up. So instead of me feeling guilty that somehow I messed up and deviated from this path I envisioned as an idiot 15-year-old, right? That's kind of what it comes down to, is like, why am I holding myself accountable to this thing that I dreamed up when I was that young? Because I didn't know anything about the world. Certainly naive, like probably most people at that age. And so that really reframed things for me and allowed me to say, like, okay, well, if that's the case, then I'm exactly where I should be, regardless of what other people would project on me of whether they find me successful or not. And that's okay. Like, everyone's going to have their interpretation of that. But for me, I sit back and go like, okay, this lets some pressure off, because I'm not playing catch up to anything. I'm not trying to rectify something that went wrong. I'm where I should be. So what can I do with what I have now? And that was probably mid-cycle of us writing and recording that first album, that thought finally occurred to me. And so I think it's important for people to consider not just your motivations, but what your definition of success is, because if you're not careful, you might find yourself in a place where you might be meeting your definition and you just don't know it, and you're being unhappy or holding yourself back for kind of silly reasons. At least I know that I was. So that's why I think this topic is potentially a really powerful one, because if you can sit back and find a quiet place and really get in touch with yourself on, why did I start doing this? And what is it that I really care about? And how can I do that with where I am today? You know, it doesn't mean lowering your bar of success, but I think it means getting more in tune with what that definition of success really is.
There was it's so funny. We were this is such a great topic. And I was just listening to another podcast, Smartless. They had Bono on this past week, and he was talking about, you know, because they were asking him questions about how is it now, you know, you have both your son who is fronting a band, Inhaler, which is also really great. Right.
Yeah.
And again, you know, one would make the assumption, of course, Bono's kids are going to be creative. You know?
I would assume.
Yeah. And they're also going to be successful because they might be riding the coattails of his success, and all the people, you know, it becomes what people would believe to be an easier path, right? You have this massively successful artist.
The benefit of nepotism.
Yeah. Yeah. But also
or genetics.
But also that sort of critique. It's like, are you going to be as good? Do you sing as well?
Yeah.
All these kind of things. But the point of it was,
people probably have higher expectations of those people.
I'll paraphrase this because I know I won't get it exactly how he put it, but I think his wife they were having a discussion when their son was younger, and he was into video games and just sitting there kind of playing video games, but he had also been playing guitar and was incredible.
Yeah.
And his wife's telling Bono, like, you know, we got to get him motivated. You know, he's just going to be sitting here playing video games and miss sort of the opportunity. I think the question kind of got up like, well, were you really kind of pushing him towards, you know, getting into music or all that? Or was that something that both of you were cognizant of and say, oh no, we already had to deal with it with you in touring the world and all the craziness that happens with that. I don't want my kids to have to deal with that same thing. But it came out naturally. They're having this discussion. So he goes in there and he's like, hey, you're getting really good at this game, whatever the game was. He's like, yeah, Dad. Yeah. And he's, you know, of course, as you can imagine, I think of this as hysterical because, you know, Bono is larger than life.
Right.
But the kids never think of, you know, no matter who you are.
I'm sure he's just dad.
Dave Grohl's talked about this as well. Like, you know, the kids are like, okay, yeah, whatever. Thanks. Yeah, Dad. You're a dork, you know? So he's sitting there playing the video game or whatever. And Bono's trying to have this kind of conversation. Like, you know, you could be the best at this game ever. You could really, if you really focus all your energy and time, you could be the best at it. And it's like, click. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Really? You think so, huh? Yeah. Yeah. And he goes, and that's going to be, girls are going to be really attracted to that. And he's like, oh, I see. You're having one with me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're giving me shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, continue to do that, but just don't forget you're really great. You're a really great guitar player. Don't forget that. And that was kind of it. And then he went and he's like, okay. And then he goes and becomes his own thing. And they are pretty successful by whatever definition you might want to call that, right?
Well, they're doing it, right?
They're doing it. Yeah. And they were doing it like they were a high school band, you know, him and his friends, and they met and they became Inhaler, and they're doing pretty well. One thing that I thought about when you were talking about this too, and I think a lot of people think about this too, and I guess it brings up a good question, or maybe the next part of this topic is like, how much does the culture around this influence the idea of what making it is? And we go back to that piece about when I was a kid, you know, I was fortunate enough, like I had friends. I didn't have it. I was in a very rural area of my small town, and we didn't have MTV yet. So I had to go into an area that would get that cable so that I could go. So I would go to a friend's house and we would watch videos, and I would get to see this kind of thing. And that was sort of opening my eyes to that part of that culture. And it would very much influence that and made me think a lot about, man, this would be so great. Even when we, my friend Greg and I were trying to play songs in his house and learn cover tunes and all that, and try and do the poses and all this kind of stuff, because we're coming up in the era of hair metal. So we're doing all the crazy, all this kind of stuff. There's a whole crazy story about him doing the guitar spin that I'll say for another day, but it did not end well. So anybody out there, please don't do that. Even if you have locking strap locks or whatever, please don't do this.
I love the videos on, like, do you ever watch the compilations of those
Yes,
fails?
The fails, yeah.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
That's like a whole day for me of just laughing.
But we were so in it.
But let me tell you though, sorry, as much as maybe it's not recommended, I have pulled those off.
Oh yeah.
And people do love it. Oh, people do love it.
It's hot shit for sure.
Yeah. As long as you have a backup guitar, just don't do it with your favorite.
Or your very own only guitar ever that you saved up all your money to buy. Yeah.
Inadvisable. Yeah.
Yeah. Please don't do that and break the neck of the guitar. Anyway, so all those things, at least for us, then it was, you hit Parader, a magazine, Spin, Rolling Stone. We would see this and see and kind of read and ingest the culture that way. And that informed how we thought or perceived what success would be for us if we chose that path.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm not out of touch with it, I don't think. I mean, I still very much, I send you YouTube videos of going, oh my God, can you imagine this? Like watching Oasis play in Nebworth or at Manchester, and you see like 200, 300,000 people pogoing.
Yeah.
Like that gives me chills. I can't even imagine what that feels like for Liam or Noel or any of those guys when they were doing that. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that energy is
insanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think about what people ingest now in the culture and how it can both be exciting, but it can also be misleading. Like that false sense of like, because it, as many people that tell you, it's a 1 in a million thing. I think Grohl had talked about this too, like in his book. Nirvana never set out to go be this massive, like huge palatable thing that everyone related to. It was completely accidental.
Well, it was counterculture. It was kind of meant to be the opposite of that. So it
absolutely
ironic that it turned into, a global phenomenon.
They love Sonic Youth, and Sonic Youth played theaters that were not huge. But they're like, yeah, this band's cool. Maybe we could just do that. And that would be our definition of that.
Yeah.
They never wanted to change the world in the way that happened. And you see the downside of that, in a very brutal way.
Yeah.
So I often wonder, and I guess asking you the same, like, how much does that influence people now? How much do you see, like, because it's the YouTube phenomenon too, like, you got some kid out there playing a video game that people watch and he gets paid to do that. So that still blows my mind. The influencers, the culture where people get paid to do that. I mean, I know it's not as prevalent today maybe as it was a few years ago, but that kind of culture is out there and it permeates people and it makes them think like, oh, if this idiot can do that, so can I.
Yeah.
Right. So making it then gets a bit distorted.
Yeah, well, I think things change so rapidly now that I think people are like, there's always new platforms and the new thing, right? It was MySpace and then it was Facebook and then it was, yada, yada, like all these other different things. I think there's two sides to this coin. I think people need larger than life heroes. Right. Usually those are the people who get you into it in the first place. Sing Slash, on stage, ripping with GNR or whoever, right? You see the big people who are so talented and so great that they deserve to be where they are. So those people serve as an inspiration, and I think they spark that creativity or that excitement for people because they're so available, right? Whether that was finding them in a record store or whether that's MTV or YouTube or whatever the hell, right? But I agree with you that I think the downside is if you're not careful, your subconscious or what you're seeing out there from the elite becomes your only definition of success. Mm-hmm. And it can really undermine you and your ability to create great things, because now, people talk about this as a good thing and a bad thing. Whatever it is, everyone's got a laptop. I mean, hell, we do it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we yes. completely self-produce, everything.
Yeah.
And so anyone can make something, and because of that, and distribute it and everything, that means that the market is flooded. So it's so hard to find great new artists, even if you're trying to do it on purpose. So it makes it harder for someone to get a piece of the pie, I think. But at the same time, like, the reason why you get into it for most people, like if your intentions are pure and it's not just, I want to get girls or, I want to make a boatload of money.
Right.
If that is your, I guess, your motivation, I would recommend, certainly you don't have to be a rock god to get girls with a guitar. But also you're probably not going to make a boatload of money. And, hey, far be it from me to tell anyone that they're not going to make money doing it, because certainly people do. And I think that's awesome. So, I'm not trying to, throw stones at anyone. But I do think that can't be the motivation. So I think, you need social media and all these outlets. You see someone with a, bajillion followers. It's easy to think like, okay, wow, I want to be that guy. I want to have all these people, like, I think some people get into it for the validation too. It's like, oh man, wouldn't it be so cool to have, 3 million people tell me how great I am every time I post a video on Instagram or, there are going to be those people. But it's kind of a shallow pursuit. And there's so many things culturally with the way that things are set up. I mean, everyone's showing their best side and, doing 5,000 takes to get the one good one. You don't see any of the stuff behind it or the thousands of hours that someone put into getting good and maybe struggling for a really long time. Most, not all, but most big artists have a big struggle story, or they took an incredible risk to put themselves in a situation where they had even a possibility of success.
Yeah.
And those things aren't talked about very often. And so I do think that it's deceptive a little bit, not intentionally so, maybe for some, but I think it's deceptive to completely base all of your ideas of success off of just what you see, because there's so much that you don't see. And, I mean, it's really interesting to think about, because there are a lot of ways to get seduced and not realize that maybe you're being seduced by someone else's definition, or maybe by your own insecurities or ego getting in the way without even noticing it, right? Like, hey, I'd love to have a million likes on a post, or, but at the end of the day, that's not why I do it. I do it because I need to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about that too. Like the music for us is in the blood. And I think regardless of the output or getting it out there, which is certainly the byproduct of it, we don't exist without being able to have that ability to be able to put something there. I was literally just talking to you about this. There were periods for me where I fell out of love with playing keyboard or, piano, synths, whatever. Right. And because it didn't feel like it was part of the thing that was going to get me there. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I got to play guitar, or I'm going to have to play bass or whatever, because maybe that's what I can do to get in a band, because keyboards weren't really cool. at a certain period of my life,
Sure.
right? When I'm a teenager, it's like I said, it's hair metal, and you're not seeing anybody that's doing it. That's really cool.
Well, that's a lesson too, is that all things fall in and out of fashion.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. Because if you go back, like for me, early 80s, you think about bands, you know, a lot of that synthwave era in like 80 and even earlier than that, that was really cool. They were doing some really great stuff. And you have like the Eurythmics and Duran Duran and Culture Club and Thompson Twins and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you know, the Cars, and they all have keys in their band and they sound phenomenal. But then that ends and people kind of go into this other shift. And you're very impressionable as a teenager. So, you know, the things that around you influence you that way. But there were places where I just fell out of that instrument, and coming back to it, you know, finding another artist that gets me back into going, okay, this can be cool and can be expressive in a totally different way that I had never thought of, pulled me back. You know, I'll thank Trent Reznor again for that. And this will be one of 1,000 times that I mention his name, but he did, you know, that did bring me back into that, where I was like, oh my God, what is this? This felt like it was from another world. When I first heard that Pretty Hate Machine, and I'm like, okay. And I was feeling the angst, and I'm feeling that type of thing. And I immediately went out and I'm like, okay, I have to go buy a synthesizer. I have to figure out a way to be able to record stuff like this now.
Right.
Because now I know, now it awoken something in me that I was like, okay, I can do this. I can finally get back to this. And I think at that point I had a cheap Washburn acoustic guitar. And I'm like, I suck at this. I suck.
Who didn't have a cheap Washburn guitar?
I suck so bad at playing guitar, but I wanted to because I saw everyone out there. I'm like, okay, well, success equals playing guitar. But I've fallen into these pitfalls a lot. I'll go back to high school because we talk about like the validation piece, and now it's on a grandiose scale. But then for me, it was similar. Like, there's a piano that's in our auditorium where we would practice with chorus and all that. And I was a band nerd, unapologetically a band nerd. Played in marching band, played for chorus, played for the plays and musicals and all that. I did all that stuff. But on our lunch break, the auditorium would be open. People could go sit in there. You know, and I felt like I could play, you know, I was going in and I'd be playing like Cinder My Love by Journey or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to swoon some of the chicks.
This one's for the ladies.
For the ladies, yeah. And, you know, you would get a few that would come over and they would hear you play, but I'm not a singer. I was never a singer. So.
You mean you can't take down Steve Perry?
Couldn't take down Steve Perry even if I wanted to. But I could play the song, so people would come over, and it was like you get a few girls that you might like, and that was my end. That was my way to kind of go, okay, maybe a girl will find me interesting because I can play an instrument, right? I was also giving lessons to a guy who was a very good friend of mine, and I was teaching him, but he did not have the patience to learn how to play a Journey song. He wanted to learn like, okay, give me what's the quick thing that I can do?
Give me chopsticks, son.
Not even that. It was like, can you just teach me how 3 chords will go together, like C, F, and G, like a 1, 4, 5 type chord progression.
Sure.
Right? And I remember going over to his house. He had a piano there, and I would teach him, like, okay, here's how you could write a song. And if you want, you can put the minor in it if you want to kind of color it up. And, you know, maybe after, I don't know. I know this is, memory doesn't serve me well, but I would say maybe I gave him like 3, maybe 4 lessons, right? Just teaching him how to do chords, right? And this son of a bitch, I come into the auditorium. I'm like, I'm coming to sit back down to do my swooning. Females come to me, please.
Yeah. Right.
Because otherwise
Put out the bat signal.
I'm an acne-filled nerd. But please, you know, maybe the music's going to do it. And I go in there and I hear some guy just ding, 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 whatever. The most simplistic thing ever with these 3 chords. And I was like, oh, that dude is up there and he's taking my spot.
Yeah.
And now, and he's made up some ridiculous lyrics and he's singing, which is something I couldn't do.
Oh, yeah.
And now
Every girl in the school.
Every girl in the school has basically surrounded this piano and then listening to this. And I'm going, I created you. What have you done to me?
Yeah. The highest level of betrayal.
It was so heartbreaking. But it also, again, that's one of those things. It's like, did you get into doing this because of that? That's ridiculous, Kevin. Why on earth did you? Come on, calm down. Good for him,
Yeah.
And that was great. And that's good. And eventually, his 3 chords didn't play out, a couple months into his tour of the auditorium every lunch break, and he would play the same old because he didn't have anything else. And it's like, okay.
Hit a ceiling pretty quick.
Yeah. I heard this already, dude.
Yeah.
So it started to peter out pretty quick.
Play Freebird.
So I had moved on and gotten over it. And I'm like, this is going to be a quick fall.
Yeah.
But it was definitely
Karma's a bitch.
Karma is a bitch. But it was an important lesson about that too, because there was a question for me at that very moment where I was like, why am I doing it? And I think at that point, again, for any teenager out there who's playing an instrument or interested in doing this or making art of any kind, there are motivations out there that, like you said, if you're not careful, can lead you down a pretty crazy path.
Yeah.
And especially with the world of social media, it can be a very great thing. And again, I know even for us, we put our video out and we're like, oh my God, we got 20,000 hits.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. But even
so
that.
Goddamn famous.
Yeah, we're so famous right now. This is incredible. Holy shit. 20,000 people watched us play this song.
Yeah, it's like getting a $20 bill when you were like 10.
Right.
I'm so rich.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so rich.
And then you find out they're like, oh yeah, well, people, they basically sit through 30, 40 seconds of this video so they can get a free thing or a free coin to play some game or whatever.
Yeah.
And sort of that whole thing, it kind of rips the fantasy of what this is, and it brings you back down to reality.
Yeah.
And go, but
or
again,
even the legitimate views make it
right
30, 45 seconds in, and they're like, all right, move on to the next thing.
Move on to the next thing.
It's not for everybody, right? And so you go, oh man, I really thought everyone was going to check out this whole thing. I
thought this is going to blow us through the stratosphere.
Yeah.
But again, it's very deceptive. So it's like, I came back to reality because in the moment in which we did the video, we had the whole thing and all that kind of stuff. This moment I was like, oh man, okay, this could really happen. And I've only had a few of those in my life. And I know we talked about this last time, you got to tour, you got to do that. And that was a very good thing, but also a very challenging thing too, because
it always sounds cooler than it was.
As you say, it's not the Instagram picture that's your best version.
No,
right?
No.
It's the grueling, I'm sitting on the, next to the gas pump eating a Slim Jim, because our trailers broke down and we got to figure out how to get this, or we need to get gas money or all that kind of stuff. The reality of that. And we'll have many a moment to talk about, my band Love Murder Box.
Still the greatest band name of all time.
We'll find that video and put it out. Yes. Fantastic name.
We'll have to watch it on here.
I'll blame Trent for that one too, but it's not his fault that I had terrible taste in naming a band. But nevertheless, again, all of those kind of things, like us doing the record, us getting the video, us going and playing live, that was the closest to me at ever what I thought to be that childhood dream of making it. And now I'm just like, I'm so grateful, so immensely grateful to have the gear and the talent and the people in my life that support it, that I can just go home and go, today I feel like writing a song. And I do it. And that to me, like when I get to a point where I go, yeah, I just want to share it with you. I don't care about, I don't want to post it right now because to me, maybe I isn't ready or whatever. But just sending it to your friend and going, what do you think? And getting validation even there, or saying, oh, I kind of dig this. This is cool. That's it. That to me feels just as great at this moment than playing in front of 300,000 people.
Well, yeah. I mean, the benefit of more time doing it, I think, helps reveal that, use the onion metaphor, right? Like there's all these layers, all these things that are great potential things about being an artist, right? But the further that you get into the center, you start to realize for you as a person what's most important. And I would hope for most people it is exactly what you just said. It's creating art, I think that has to be the most important thing. But you said something really interesting a few minutes ago about how, you had been into keyboard and then that wasn't exactly what was popular. So you felt the need to shift elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really important point of another pitfall that's really easy to fall into. And leads to a couple of other thoughts, but I really believe that you should take in all your influences, like whatever excites you about music, whether it's cool or not, because we mentioned Nirvana, and there are so many other examples of this. Again, I think what's popular is important when you're in your, formidable years, whatever you want to call it, right? You're between, let's say 14 and, 21 or whatever. You have all of these things that, of course you're staying up on what's hip, and that's important. However, you're probably going to have influences across a spectrum of music and things that you love. And that's going to help create whatever your identity is as an artist. And I think it's so important to stick to your guns, because like the style of music that we do is not what's popular right now. It's just not. I mean, it doesn't mean that rock is dead. I don't believe that. I hear that argument all the time. Yeah. I don't buy into it. I think it's alive and well, although, it certainly isn't at the same level that it was decades past. But that said, it's what I love and what really motivates me. And there have been times throughout my journey with music where I've felt like I did need to sacrifice what it was that I wanted to do because I didn't think people would maybe like it, or that it wasn't new enough, or it didn't fit into what someone might hear on the radio, so they wouldn't give it the time of day. If I had it to do over again, I wouldn't do that at all. And I would encourage other people not to just flow with what's current. Now, if what's current is really inspiring you, by all means, but if your reason for doing it is because you have self-doubt about what it is you really want to be making, I say, fuck that. Yeah. Like, don't fall into that, and pursue what really excites you. I think, man, like if people took anything away from this, I would hope it would almost be that of follow your gut. And sometimes what's also really weird is it can work the other way too. When I was in high school, probably like a lot of, I don't know, people my age or people that age, I was an angry teenager. I really was. I was super angry. I wanted the craziest, most angry music I could possibly find. And I really fed off of that for a long time. And that led me into all kinds of different genres of metal, especially, was totally my thing. And eventually I found a conflict within myself that I started to realize that the music maybe that I really loved at that time, and I still love, although my taste had broadened a lot. That was basically all I listened to at that age. I realized that not everything that inspired me was what I was meant to make. Because my musical voice and my inclinations as a songwriter were very different. I tried to beat my head against that wall for a long time of going, well, I really love these bands, so that must mean that's what I'm supposed to make. For a time, that was really fun, and I wouldn't take any of that back. But I do wish that I would have, the thought would have occurred to me. It's like, hey, you can love that stuff and then still be okay with making what comes natural to you. Because what I aspire to do every time we make a song is create something that I want to listen to. And I'm not exactly trying to fill a void in music necessarily or anything like that. But I do think it just took me a while to realize not everything you love is what you're going to make. And that's okay. So still be confident to create what comes naturally without falling into the pitfall of, well, I need to be in this box because I love this set of records or whatever, these set of artists. And isn't it weird that I listen to this stuff, but then this other thing comes out? I think all that overthinking and overanalyzing and that, again, self-doubt or anxiety about it or the ego part of it, well, this isn't going to be popular, or how does this equal this? It doesn't matter, right? Like you take in all these influences, but you can only be you. And if you're chasing being someone else or being something else, then you're going to probably find the pursuit ultimately not worthwhile. And you're going to wonder why you're not satisfied, you know? So I think, you know, be okay with being who you are. And that's a tall order. I mean, it seems simple, but I think most people struggle with that on some level. And it takes a lot of reflection and thinking like, okay, well, what is it that I do well? And what is it that I enjoy about, like, what I'm trying to write this certain kind of thing. Why? Why? What is it doing for me? And realizing that whatever the answer is, that's okay. You know?
Yeah. You made me just think about Billie Eilish of all people, but I did watch that documentary that she did a couple years back, and it absolutely blew my mind. And now, admittedly, I think prior to that, like any person maybe who's in his 40s, I wasn't connected. You know?
Yeah,
I wasn't connected to Billie Eilish.
Another pop star. Awesome.
In the same way that maybe someone in their teens that were. So I didn't have a lot to inform me about her or Phineas or any of it. And I watched that and I'm like, this is so endearing and so cool to me to watch, like that they made music where she's sitting on her bed and he's sitting there next to her with a laptop and maybe a guitar, and they're just working this out. And she had that natural voice, a really great voice that works for what she wanted to do. And they figured it out together and made something.
Well, following their intuition.
Yeah.
You know, don't overthink it, right? Like do what comes natural.
Yeah. It didn't sound like from anything. It's just one of those things when you hear it and see it. And of course she has insecurities and she was going through all the things. I mean, she's a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, in the midst of all of it, and she's still trying to just learn about boys and all of those kind of things, but also making art that ends up being really incredible in influencing quite a lot of people. And I'm sure that pressure, once you do that and you do become successful, by what people tend to believe that generic definition is, which is monetary success or a lot of fan base.
Yeah, a lavish lifestyle, a lot of followers, you know.
Then it becomes even
streams
harder
to
achieve that again. And so the pressure for those artists, they're like, okay, I already peaked. You know, I won 6 Grammys for this album. I don't even know if she was 21 yet. I think she had just gotten a car, I think. And I might be, you know, doing a terrible job of recapturing that, but 17, 18 years old, wins 6 Grammys for her first full album.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure to go. And then like, oh yeah, I'm doing a track for James Bond movie. I'm like,
yeah,
the anxiety that
Setting the bar
feel-
high.
that I feel now for her.
Yeah.
Having to go and do that again and again and still get out there and be relevant. And try and go, okay, I know that my audience, because this is truth. Longevity in that world, once you have done it, you know, your audience change, they grow up.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're 15, 16, writing this record with your brother and you blow up and you become enormous, or you're Nirvana and you become a generational, like a paradigm shift in the culture.
Right.
Then you go, okay, what now? And for them, like In Utero, that was a big FU to everything, you know?
Yeah.
No question. They're like, yeah, even from the producer all the way down to every song that they're putting on there.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we didn't want any part of what Nevermind became.
Yeah.
We liked the songs, but we didn't want any of that. We did not want to deal with that anymore. At least that's how it came. For Billie Eilish, it's like, I love my fans, but they're also going to have to grow up with me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep changing and evolving and becoming different and having different experiences. And I'm going to get older.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, yeah, you're going to lose fans because they're going to find something else. Maybe that one time they had green dyed hair and now they're into punk. And then maybe they got into hardcore metal, or maybe they got into John Mayer. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right. But their tastes are going to change quickly. So if you're chasing that and you've already become successful, that's also another pitfall, even for people who have made it by definition.
Well, yeah. And even if you haven't, I think it's still easy to fall into. We can put ourselves in boxes sometimes of like, this is the thing I'm trying to do. You know, a song that we recently wrote falls into that bucket for me of, you know, we wrote this song that'll, you know, be on our next album. And as I'm like recording it, the vocals and everything, I'm going, man, this is different for me. And it made me really uncomfortable because in my mind, I'm thinking of myself as one thing, and then I'm hearing myself back as something that fits outside of my own perception of my artistry, and going, okay, I don't know what to do with this because this doesn't feel like me.
You're very emo, by the way, and I'm not going to take you off this tangent because it's super important. But I have tried for years to get you to put the makeup on and the whole nine, and you just haven't succumbed to it yet. Even though the bands and people that you love certainly lean into that. And jokingly, I've said, you know, bro, just put the mascara on. You'll feel it. You'll feel the character. So
hey,
maybe
that's to come. Maybe that's
what it was. Your inner emo. You just haven't fully accepted that as yourself.
Well, it's funny though, because I don't think that the song we're talking about is emo at all.
No, definitely not. Just made me think of that.
Yeah. But you know, the point there being is it can be easy to, after you've been working on something for a while, that when it comes time to evolve, that you can really second guess yourself. You know, I know, you know, local bands who seem to do this more than anyone, but you know, there are big bands, some of which who seem to evolve all the time. And they're really pushing for that, even at the cost of sometimes really challenging their fan base.
Oh yeah.
And then you have other artists where you're like, man, this is like the 7th iteration of the first record, you know, and you know, when you turn it on, you're going to get exactly what you heard the first time.
When you hear AC/DC, you're like, I can't wait because I know that I'm going to get what I expect to get. And that's that. They got a great formula for rock and roll, and they do it unapologetically. But there's a certain part of me as a listener that's like, I know what I'm going to get from an AC/DC record. With a Radiohead record, I don't.
Yeah.
And there's a part equally as exciting about that because I'm like, ooh, I don't know. And you know what? Certain records I'm going to go, yeah, I didn't like it. I just couldn't connect with it. Other records I'm going to go, that was absolutely genius. And that's the brilliance of that. You know, no two ways are wrong.
No, they're not. I think my only bit of like cautionary advice is if you're doing the same thing over and over again because that's what you love, you know, by all means continue doing it. But if you ever find yourself holding yourself back against something new because it challenges your own perception of who you are as an artist, that might mean you've locked yourself in a bit of a box. And so I think there's validity to both, especially, you know, if you're AC/DC and you invented your brand of rock and roll,
hey man,
ride that shit to the bank.
Yep.
You know,
yep.
For those of us who aren't as lucky, you know, like I think constantly pursuing, challenging yourself and expanding that view that you have of yourself can be really, really healthy. And I think probably the last thing that I really have to say on this topic is you said something else a minute ago that got me to think about my definition of making it. And that was having people to work with that really inspire you. Because that through a lot of my time with music has been the missing piece. And, you know, our last episode, we talked all about collaboration and what that means to us. So I won't rehash that whole thing. But suffice it to say, whereas I'm sure not everyone has the same definition, for me, so much of making it is having other people that I can make music with, perform with, write with, collaborate with, that like that, just that alone gives me so much energy. But then being able to especially write together, it's great to come up with a song idea, to write a song, to do it all yourself. I've done it. I always found it left me wanting a little bit, you know, and there's just something about having other people that you really trust, that you have a great relationship with, that you can hand an idea off to and then see it become something else. And that's always the most beautiful part of it to me, because you're going to have one idea of what you think it is, and then they're going to have a completely different interpretation. It might be similar, but it's always going to be different because you're just not the same people with the same background, with the same taste. And then it becomes something that much more unique and that much more interesting. And watching that metamorphosis that happens when you work with other people, like the fact that I have that now at this stage of my life with the people who I get to work with, namely you and Michael, I'm never left feeling that way anymore. I'm never left going like, man, like this is cool, but it's just me. You know, like I wish I had someone else's, you know, magic on this, and being able to send things back and forth like you're talking about, and get the perspective and really challenge to see how it can get better. Man, I love that so much. And if I didn't have that, I do think I wouldn't feel like I've quote unquote made it. You know, like that's been such a big piece for me. And that's, I think, most of the bands that I loved growing up, like I'll name Avenged Sevenfold as a band that was really, really influential to me. And I would see them, and they're very vocal about this. You know, they're a Southern California band. They all grew up together. They all went to school together. They all got in fights together. They're all best friends, you know, and they get to go around the world and make music and do all of this as a group of people who really love and care about each other. And so to me, I think that was part of my early definition of what making it meant, is like being able to hang out with people that you love and respect and admire and do it together, you know, like I prefer team sports over solo sports, you know, I guess is a way to put it.
Yeah, even when they break your heart.
Yeah.
Comes full circle.
Yeah, full circle. But that's been a key piece for me. You know, if I didn't have you and Michael, I think I'd still be searching for that feeling of contentment with what we do. And I don't know where that comes from or why that is, but that's a big one. And so I guess a shout out to the previous episode, you know, find your collaborator. If that resonates with you, find people you can work with.
Yeah.
Find people who can challenge you and even if it's, having to teach each other how to play instruments and get better, I mean, that was me early on when I met Michael. I mean, hell, at that point, as our drummer, he was a better guitar player than me by a long shot. And I was just happy to be there because I didn't belong, but having him to challenge me and teach me stuff. And, eventually I fortunately was able to surpass him on my own instrument. But that was huge for me, cause I got to be in the room with those guys and just absorb the things that they did really well that I wanted to get better at.
I think for me, that thought, you just made me think about a perfect sort of bow tie to this. And for anyone out there who's in or on the precipice of trying to figure out what making it is, go get in a room with the people that you love who also like to create art or play music of any kind, plug in your instrument and make great fucking noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Do what excites you. Even if it is a wall of noise.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if someone else would, say that they think it's cool. It doesn't matter. No. It really doesn't. And there's so many artists out there who are phenomenally successful that I don't get.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you that people don't know.
Yeah.
And people don't always get it right away. Follow your intuition, because if you're an artist, you're hearing or feeling something that matters. You really are. And it might not show its full face immediately when you start, and you'll probably make a lot of shitty things before you make something that's great. Mm-hmm. But you got to trust that what you're pursuing is worthwhile and will result in something that will resonate with someone, Even
if it's only the people in the room.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Even if it's just you.
Yeah.
So yeah, believe in that, like trust in yourself and just make great shit by your own definition. Man, hopefully that inspired somebody, because like I want to go right now.
Yeah, I'm inspired. Let's go make some noise. I love it. That's a perfect end to that, I think. That's a great place to cut it,
I agree. I agree. Well, hey, thank you all for listening. If you made it to the end, thank you even more. If you didn't, you're not hearing this anyway, but we thank you as well.
Absolutely.
We want to hear from you. So if you have thoughts on the show, you have questions for us, or are someone who would like to be on the show, please reach out. You can find us at thesonicalchemy.com. And we are elsewhere in the social media world. So please reach out. Let us know what you think about the show. And we can't wait for you to hear our next episode. We're shooting another one today, and it'll be out shortly. So with that, we're going to sign off. Have an excellent day, and we'll see you next time.
Go make noise. Lots of noise.